Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Thanks for watching. Tonight, the Prime Minister is in Windsor. Plus, City Council is supporting a proposal for 2 natural gas power turbines in Windsor, despite public outcry. A Chatham-Kent nurse says she was fired after speaking to CBC about her employer. We'll tell you about how the fallout played out. And a debate over police in schools. The Public School Board will be discussing the issue tonight. Let's go to a live look here inside of Willisted Manor in Walkerville. That's where Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is hosting a fundraiser. We've also seen about a couple dozen protesters outside the building this evening. The event is for a Liberal Party fundraising event, but it follows a big day that included a stop at the Windsor Assembly Plant. And our CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa followed Justin Trudeau throughout the day. So Jen, why was the Prime Minister here in Windsor today?
Well, the Prime Minister had a series of events lined up today, Kat, and he really spent those engaging with the community. This is the second time in less than a year that Trudeau has been in town. Last May was his most recent appearance, and at the time he joined Stellantis leaders and Ontario Premier Doug Ford. Stellantis was announcing funding for EV production upgrades to its plants. But back to today. So he started off the day at the University of Windsor, and that's where he met with students at the Ed Lumley Center for Engineering Innovation. There, he learned about some of their ongoing projects, in particular electric vehicle motors and batteries. The Dean of the Faculty of Engineering also told me that he spoke with students about their experience at the school and their research, as well as making sure that they are learning the skills to take part in electric vehicle production in the future. Now, just a few streets away from the university, there was some anti-mandate and anti-Trudeau people who had gathered in their vehicles. There was also a handful that drove by Stellantis' Windsor Assembly Plant just before he arrived there this afternoon. At the plant, Trudeau got a tour of one section, a part of the Pacifica assembly line. He did a walk around and was shaking hands with workers who took some time out of their shift to chat with him and take pictures. Also, there was the Chief Operating Officer of Stellantis, Mark Stewart, and Windsor-Tecumseh MP, Eric Kuzmarchuk.
Jen, you mentioned that the Prime Minister stopped to chat with workers. What did they talk about?
Yeah, so a lot of it was appreciation for the workers and what they do. And he spoke about how Canada is really a key resource in the push towards electric vehicles and environmentally friendly technology. Yet, despite the hard work by auto workers here, many of them face multiple layoffs a year. And most recently, a large part of that has been because of the microchip shortage. I asked Trudeau what his government will do to fix that.
Being reliant on supply chains from China, with their zero COVID strategy being a real challenge over the past years, but also with challenges around unreliability and political incompatibility, means that building up a strong supply chain here that'll prevent those kinds of disruptions is really important. And Canada's already an important player in semiconductors. We have an extremely large plant in Bromont, Quebec, that is part of the supply chain and ecosystem for semiconductors, and there's more to do.
Trudeau also spoke about encouraging Canadians to buy EVs through rebates that the government has put out. The federal government has put out new targets where it wants every new vehicle bought in Canada as of 2035 to be an electric vehicle.
Thanks for this, Jen. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
City Council is supporting a potential power project in Ford City. Capital Power wants to build gas-powered turbines that will generate electricity. It says that would only happen when power demand peaks to create more supply. Without it, the company says there could be rolling blackouts to handle high demand. Council supported the plan in an 8-2 vote. Fabio Costante and Angelo Marignani voted against the proposal. Now, this does not mean that the project will go ahead. It needs approvals from upper levels of government. The company may also move forward with a battery storage system instead. That's what it originally proposed back in September. According to a report sent to Council, this plan could bring a 2 to 4% increase in Windsor's greenhouse gas emissions. Many delegates opposed the plan. Members of a youth climate group pointed out that the city has declared a climate emergency and were confused why it's being considered. They also reminded council that the city has called for Ontario to phase out gas-powered plants. That was in 2020. When the motion to support the plan was passed, people in council chambers shouted shame.
And I want you to choose people and the planet over profit. I want you to honor the City of Windsor's November 2020 resolution calling for the phase out of gas-fired power in Ontario.
Ontario can be proud of the landmark achievement in getting off coal already. Council now has a responsibility to protect against expansion of gas-fired electricity to avoid erasing those hard-won benefits.
I ask you, would adding a fossil fuel burning electrical plant be something that we would mention when trying to attract another battery plant or other green venture?
And Mayor Dilkens.
Support. That motion carries. 11.2, regular business items proposed. Very good. Thank you, sir. Thanks for attending tonight.
Council's support does not approve what's next, like we mentioned before, that will go through upper levels of government. The independent electricity system operator will also need to approve the plan. They manage the power system in this province. Council is expected to receive a report about hitting net zero emissions in the fall. A public health nurse in Chatham-Kent has been fired after speaking out against her employer. Carolyn Martin went public last month about two policies she said were questionable. Shortly after speaking with CBC, Martin was let go. Jason Vio has more on the story.
Some policies here at Chatham-Kent's public health unit bothered one nurse so much she said she needed to speak out. Carolyn Martin has been working here as a registered nurse, mostly with teens and young moms, for 20 years. Weeks after going public, she was fired. Her concerns were about two things: the health unit working out of and listing Refuge as a place for pregnant women, even though it has anti-abortion connections, and CK Public Health charging teens $10 for each pack of birth control.
I'm not taking someone's lunch money that day so that they can, I'm not doing that. They're not going to go hungry so that they can get their pills.
Officially, Martin was fired because she didn't provide a sick note for being absent from work for more than 3 days. She received an email from the CEO on December 15th at 6:34 p.m. asking for that documentation. Then Martin showed CBC an email that was sent the next day at 9:47 a.m. from HR saying she was fired for not providing that medical note.
I was blown away because I could have gotten a doctor's note. Like, that's not impossible. The timeline she gave me, impossible.
Martin believes her termination has everything to do with her going public. Still, she doesn't have any regrets. The health unit, though, says it doesn't comment on personnel matters.
Maybe there will be change. Who knows? But I won't be there to see it if it happens. I'm okay with that.
One thing Martin said she hopes will change is the health unit severing ties with a place like Refuge. CK Public Health directed pregnant women and their families here to Refuge. It's a place with anti-abortion connections that women aren't told about before they come. And when we asked the health unit why they were directing women here, they appeared to scramble to pull things off of their website. CBC News first asked CK Public Health about its relationship with Refuge on November 29th at 11:39 a.m. Roughly 20 minutes later, an email is sent from a health manager instructing staffers to remove all mention of Refuge on our website. This needs to be done today. Now, these emails were obtained through a Freedom of Information request. By 12:09 p.m. the same day, another email with the subject line "Emergent Request" from the unit's public information officer. She wanted to scrub the site of the mention of Refuge. CK Public Health CEO April Redyke says her team wanted to pull down everything because some information was outdated. The goal, she says, is to put resources back online with only up-to-date information. Redyke says Refuge will still be listed as a resource despite their anti-abortion connection, adding most organizations in Chatham-Kent that help marginalized and vulnerable people are faith-based. But Martin's concern is that women aren't always aware the place they're walking into has anti-abortion connections.
Let's give women some credit that they are able to navigate and make those choices. We are not here to take sides on any political agenda.
Meanwhile, Martin admits it's scary to not have a source of income, but she says the positive responses from her colleagues, teachers, and students she helped has made it worth it.
To have some older kids from a few years ago track me down and say that they saw that, it was really special. So it made me feel validated that they came out and expressed support for me.
Jason Vio, CBC News, Windsor.
A new report is out on the risks of alcohol consumption, and it says no amount of booze is completely safe. The Canadian Centre on Substance Abuse and Addiction released their findings today and are giving the strongest warning yet about the health risks from drinking alcohol.
It's a product that is consumed by 80% of Canadians, and they have a right to know about the effects of this type of consumption, just like they have the right to know about the quality and the impact of everything else that they consume.
It says consuming beer, wine, or liquor, even in moderation, increases the risk for serious disease like several types of cancer. More than 7 drinks a week also increases your risk of heart disease and stroke. It says labels are needed to warn consumers. For the lowest risk, they recommend men and women limit their alcohol consumption to no more than 2 drinks a week, but say no amount is totally safe. The topic of police in schools will come up at a public board meeting tonight. It's not a vote on if the program should continue. Instead, the board is trying to decide if they should put together a committee to look at the program. These programs include content related to bullying, relationships, alcohol and drugs for grade 9 students, and values-based lessons for grade 6 students. The school board hired a consulting firm to create a report about students' feelings on officers in schools, which included anonymous quotes from high school students who described their mixed feelings. One student said, although it was cool hearing the stories, they will still forever hate cops no matter who they are for what they've done to them and their family. The student continued saying they're genuinely petrified of them and will very obviously try to leave the area they are in. Another student said that they see officers as safe people to be around, but that it feels really weird to have an officer at their school. A local advocate has heard similar concerns from students.
A lot of them don't feel safe with their presence there. They don't understand their presence there, and we can't even evaluate the efficacy of the programs that are being administered.
While the public board is meeting to discuss dropping policing programs, the Catholic board says they are staying the course for now.
We've had a lot of positive feedback within our school communities. Our partnerships have been valued all the way through our organization. So at this point, we're not looking at making any changes or adjustments at this time, but we're always looking to improve, and as we move forward, if that's an area that we feel that we need to go into, then we feel very comfortable working with our partners and sitting down with our local police agencies and seeing on how we can improve.
Canada's annual inflation rate cooled down to 6.3% in December. Statistics Canada says that's thanks to the big dip in fuel prices last month. But relief at the gas pump is not cushioning the sticker shock at grocery checkouts for Canadians. Anis Hadari takes a closer look.
Wholesalers like Roseland Produce see food price jumps before you do. Fruit and vegetables get shipped around Ontario from businesses like this, but the price of everything they need keeps going up, from labor to the food itself.
The costs now are pretty much unprecedented. We haven't seen them like this in years. We haven't seen them before at all, actually.
Some produce here has doubled in cost since before the pandemic.
We could be into the new normal of the price of produce.
It's a new normal that's landed on supermarket shelves.
I tend to watch prices all the time, and everything just keeps going up.
Anybody with a large family, that hurts.
It's hard to find vegetables that go on sale.
Vegetables, in particular, kept food prices soaring, up more than 13%. And even as overall inflation drops, experts say ongoing problems like weather and distribution mean food prices may not.
Saying that inflation is down still is, consistent with high elevated food prices. And I do think that we're going to be in this environment for a while.
And Canadians are not just spending more at the grocery store.
Unfortunately, now, in order to stay in business, a lot of restaurants and pubs are going to have to increase pricing.
Even if inflation drops, prices will continue to rise, just not as quickly. And anyone buying or selling food will need to adapt.
I don't think when prices go up, you ever really see prices go down. I think that's just the nature of being in business.
So food prices may keep getting hotter and won't be cooling off soon. Anis Haidari, CBC News, Calgary.
A live look outside. There you can tell we've had drizzle all day, and it's continuing into this evening and into tomorrow as well. Colette Kennedy will be here after the break with your full weather forecast, so stay with us. Colette Kennedy joins us now for a look at our weather forecast. And Colette, we're enjoying some milder temperatures, but we're paying for them in wetness.
Yes, very damp January,
Yeah,
a very
a little
mild
bit.
January. Sometimes hard to picture that it's mid-January when we have some of the readings that we've been experiencing, or at least I sometimes have to check myself anyway, because I'll be outside and it feels almost like there's that spring to the atmosphere around us. Well, we're not there yet. We've got a ways to go. The current temperatures come down a few degrees, so at 5 right now, Chatham-Kent 2, Sarnia still at 6 degrees, so really it has been quite impressive. Some of the winds here, not very strong, but between 25 and 30 kilometers an hour, keeping the atmosphere mixed a little bit. So it's not that there hasn't been some fog, but the really dense stuff is further to the east, and they're having more problems there with some lighter winds. So if you are going to be, it's once again, if you're going to be traveling, there's some areas in the province things aren't quite as comfortable. Now, there's some of the heavier rain to the east of us, but there's trailing behind this with some light showers or drizzle that we still have to contend with as we go into the evening and overnight hours. So there's more there dealing with that. And then the pink that you're seeing, that's what moved through earlier. So this is what's left. It's freezing drizzle there over into eastern Ontario. And so there are advisories for that in that neighborhood. The thicker fog off to the north and east of us, denser, I should say, where visibility in many cases is less than half a kilometer. So that is pretty dense there. So let's kind of walk you through or whirl you through. Is that what I wanted to say? I guess so. What's happening with the models in terms of this system and the back edge of it, and then the next one that's going to be lining up and coming through this week as well. So tomorrow morning, although it just looks like some cloud cover, there could still be a little bit of drizzle, so a little dampness there on the roadways. Be aware of that. And then the rest of the day is kind of quieter. By the time we see any breaks developing, though, the sun will likely have set, so nothing to gain from it there. And then here comes this next system that is going to be moving through. And it may start as a little bit of a mix, but because of the temperature story, mostly this is going to be a rain event that as it goes through, at least in the first wave. Okay, so that's overnight, say midnight to the morning hours, so midnight Wednesday to the morning hours Thursday, and then into the afternoon, another batch is going to come through for Thursday into the evening. It's on the backside of that, there's a better chance towards Windsor that we get into a bit of a mix and then some flurries as the temperatures will be coming down. Now, that system went through. I want to kind of show you the amount of rainfall likely in that 10 to 20 millimeters in terms of what we're going to be seeing with this next one that's going to be coming through. So temperatures overnight tonight, those winds sticking kind of where they are. And there you go tomorrow it's a bit of a change from today, but short-lived. The next one comes in, pushes those temperatures up, some windy conditions as well, and then we do cool down behind that one.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Colette.
You're welcome.
When we come back, we're going to take a look at the nursing shortage in Nova Scotia. Stay with us. More than 170 plausible unmarked graves have been detected at the site of a residential school in northwestern Ontario. The discovery was made by ground-penetrating radar at the former St. Mary's Indian Residential School in Kenora.
Canada and Ontario continue to say they are committed to reconciliation, to the truth, and to healing of our communities. I look forward to hearing if they will continue to honor these commitments.
Representatives of the First Nation met with members of the federal and provincial government today to discuss next steps and resources for upcoming investigations. St. Mary's Indian Residential School was operated by the Roman Catholic Church from 1897 to 1972. The National Center for Truth and Reconciliation says at least 36 students died while attending the school. And some new information is emerging about the killing of a former Afghan MP considered a champion of women's rights. Mursal Nabizada was shot dead this past weekend at her home in Kabul. A group of Canadian members of parliament had been asking the federal government to bring her to Canada before she was killed.
We came together as a all-party group to advocate for their really urgent movement to safety and to come to Canada.
Nabizada was an MP before the Taliban took over in 2021. The circumstances surrounding her death are unclear, but police say she and her bodyguard were killed by an unknown gunman in the attack at her residence, and her brother was also injured. She was one of the few female MPs who remained in Kabul after the Taliban takeover. The nursing shortage is not something happening just in Ontario. New data from Nova Scotia shows the province is struggling with a major shortage. Job vacancies are as high as 80% in some hospitals, and those nurses still on the job are working longer shifts and looking after more patients. The CBC's Brett Ruskin has the story from Halifax.
We are hearing stats from the Nova Scotia healthcare system looking at vacancy rates for nursing. 80% vacancy rates up in Cape Breton at Cape Breton Regional Hospital in the unit for the licensed practical nurses working in the emergency department unit there. In that same facility, an 83% vacancy rate for nurse practitioners working in the mental health and addictions unit. Some of the worst overall facilities include Cape Breton Regional Hospital. That is the hospital where Alison Holtoff was brought to. She was a 37-year-old mother. Her husband had brought her to the hospital back on New Year's Eve when she was complaining about stomach pain. They waited 6 hours for her to see a doctor, and she eventually died in the emergency department there. We spoke with Janet Hazelton. She's the president of Nova Scotia Nurses Union. Here's what she had to say about what nurses are going through right now.
They have to work extra, they have to work short, so instead of having 5 patients, they have 7 or 8 or 10. So it's really adds to the workload and of the nurses that are left, and it's really difficult to work short on a good day.
And so really a cycle of nurses getting too tired with the system, moving out of the system, looking for other types of healthcare jobs, making it even more difficult and challenging for those still working as nurses in the Nova Scotia healthcare system. The government continues on saying that they plan on doing everything they can to help the healthcare workers as well as Nova Scotians. We also heard from the Office of Healthcare Professionals Retention, and they talked about how there's been an investment of $340,000 most recently back in August to try to bring in international workers to the healthcare system here in Nova Scotia. Also that there is the highest financial incentives of any other healthcare system in this part of the country. So overall, we have union officials saying that there needs to be union representatives. There needs to be representatives from the employer, the health authority, as well as the government, all sitting down at the table to discuss this serious issue facing Nova Scotia. Brett Ruskin, CBC News, Halifax.
Something lighter before we go. Hundreds of people took their pets to church in Spain today. Yes, we said church. Priests blessed the critters to mark St. Anthony's Day. He was the patron saint of animals. In Madrid, a priest delivered mass as dogs barked from the pews. No doubt about it, those are some pious pets. That is it for CBC Windsor News. For more, go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good night.